The heat in Georgia doesn't just sit on you, it actively disrespects you. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and the humidity was thick enough to chew. I was standing at the end of my driveway, staring at the black, galvanized steel box that had served as my primary connection to the outside world for the last 3 years, feeling the sweat trickle down my spine like a slow-moving insect. The asphalt was radiating waves of distortion, making the perfectly manicured lawns of Whispering Pines look like a mirage, which, in a spiritual sense, they were. I had walked down to get the mail because I heard the truck. Stan, our mail carrier, had a distinct driving style. He treated the brake pedal like a suggestion and the accelerator like a sworn enemy. The squeal of his tires was usually the highlight of my afternoon, a signal that something new had arrived. A bill, a flyer for a pizza place I'd never eat at, or if I was lucky, a car parts catalog. But today, Stan hadn't waved. He'd shoved something into the box with a grimace and sped off, leaving a cloud of exhaust that hung heavy in the stagnant air. I opened the little magnetic door. It creaked. That was the first strike against me, apparently. The creak. Inside, sitting alone on the metal floor of the box, was a single envelope. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a catalog. It was thick, creamy, textured cardstock, the kind of paper usually reserved for wedding invitations or funerals. In the upper left corner, embossed in gold foil that caught the sun and blinded me for a second, was the logo, a stylized pine tree that looked more like a prison watchtower. Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, Compliance Division. I didn't open it immediately. I just held it. It had weight to it. It felt expensive. It felt like trouble. I looked back at my house. It was a good house, 2 stories, red brick, black shutters. I kept the lawn cut to the regulation height of 2.5 inches. I pressure washed the driveway every spring. I didn't leave my trash bins out past 7:00 p.m. I was a ghost in this neighborhood, the ideal resident who paid his dues on auto draft and never attended the potlucks. I just wanted to be left alone to grill my steaks and watch football. But the envelope in my hand said that my solitude was over. I ripped it open right there on the curb. The sound of the heavy paper tearing was satisfying, a small act of violence against the bureaucracy inside. I pulled out the letter. It was tri-folded, crisp, and smelled faintly of lavender sanitizer. Notice of violation. Level 1. The words were bold, centered, and typed in a font that screamed authority, probably Times New Roman, size 14. I started reading, my lips moving silently as I parsed the legalese. Dear Resident, Jack Miller, it has come to the attention of the Architectural Control Committee, ACC, that your street-facing mail receptacle is currently in violation of the Whispering Pines community. Standards, specifically Article 3, Section 7, Aesthetic Cohesion and Curbside Grandeur. I stopped. Curbside grandeur? Was that a real legal term? I looked at my mailbox again. It was a standard Postmaster General approved model. It cost $40 at Home Depot. It was black. It was on a wooden post. It was a mailbox. It held mail. It did its job without complaint. It was the Toyota Camry of mailboxes. I kept reading. The current fixture is deemed temporary in appearance and lacks the structural integrity required to reflect the premium nature of the Whispering Pines subdivision. Furthermore, the wooden post has been noted to exhibit a variance in vertical alignment of approximately 1.5 degrees, creating a visual disturbance to the streetscape. The board requires all street-facing fixtures to exhibit robust security and permanence, consistent with the architectural integrity of the primary residence. Please remedy this violation within 72 hours to avoid a daily fine of $100. At the bottom, there was a handwritten note in red ink. The penmanship was sharp, angular, and terrifyingly precise. Jack, frankly, it looks like it belongs in a trailer park, not a gated community. We need something solid, something that says security. Fix it. Patricia. Patricia. The name hit me like a splash of cold water, followed immediately by a surge of boiling rage. Patricia was the HOA president, a woman who treated the neighborhood covenants like the 10 Commandments, only with stricter penalties. She lived 4 houses down in a beige stucco palace that looked like it had been 3D printed by a computer with no soul. She was the reason we couldn't park in the street. She was the reason we couldn't paint our front doors anything other than midnight slate or obsidian. She was the reason my life was currently being interrupted by a piece of paper telling me my mailbox wasn't grand enough. I looked at the mailbox again, temporary in appearance. I had set that post in 80 pounds of quikrete. It wasn't going anywhere. Visual disturbance? It was a black bar. It blended in with the asphalt. The heat seemed to intensify. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears, a rhythmic thumping that synced with the chirping of the cicadas. Robust security, she wrote. Permanence. I folded the letter slowly, deliberately, creating a sharp crease. I didn't go back inside. I didn't go get a cold drink. I turned left and started walking down the sidewalk. The walk to Patricia's house was only about 200 yards, but in my state of mind, it felt like a march into enemy territory. I passed the Henderson place. Nice lawn, but I noticed their mailbox was a faux stone pillar that looked like plastic trying to be granite. Compliance. I passed the Gupta residence. Their mailbox was a cast-iron monstrosity that looked like a Victorian birdcage. Compliance. I reached Patricia's house. It was perfect. Aggressively perfect, the Sosulkund. Grass was a shade of green that didn't exist in nature. It was the result of chemical warfare against weeds. Her hedges were trimmed into geometric shapes, spheres and cubes, that made the yard look like a geometry test. And there, standing like a sentinel at the end of her driveway, was her mailbox. It was a brick column, matching her house perfectly. It had a limestone cap. It had a little plaque with her address in brass numbers. It was smug. It was a smug mailbox. Patricia was in the yard, of course. She was always in the yard. She was wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat that was roughly the size of a satellite dish, floral gardening gloves, and a pristine white apron over her sundress. She was on her knees, pruning a rose bush with a pair of shears that looked sharp enough to perform surgery. She didn't look up as I approached. She knew I was there. Patricia had a sixth sense for violations and confrontation. "Patricia," I said, stopping on the sidewalk. I was careful not to step on her driveway. I knew that would be a separate violation, trespassing on private easement. She snipped a dead head off a rose, the metal blades making a sharp snick sound. She turned her head slowly, the brim of her hat sweeping around like a radar dish. "Hello, Jack," she said. Her voice was sweet, dripping with that southern hospitality that is actually just a delivery system for judgment. "I see you got the mail." I held up the cream-colored envelope. "I got the love note. Are you serious with this? Curbside grandeur." She stood up, brushing a non-existent speck of dirt from her apron. She was a small woman, but she projected the authority of a 4-star general. "It's not a note, Jack. It's a formal notice. And yes, we are very serious. We have prospective buyers coming through next week. The market is shifting. We need to present a unified, high-value front. My mailbox is fine, I said, trying to keep my voice level. It's standard. It works. It's been there for 3 years. And for 3 years we've looked the other way, she said, sighing as if my mailbox had been a personal burden she had carried on her back. But standards evolve. The board voted last night. We're phasing out the post-style receptacles. They look flimsy. Flimsy? I gestured back toward my house. It's steel. It's bolted. It looks cheap, Jack, she said, dropping the sweetness. Her eyes narrowed. It looks like something you'd buy at a discount hardware store. This is Whispering Pines. We have an image. Your thing disrupts the sightlines. It lacks presence. Presence, I repeated. You want my mailbox to have presence. I want it to have permanence, she corrected. She took a step closer, pointing the shears at me for emphasis. Look at mine. She gestured to her brick pillar. That is a structure. That says, I am here to stay. That says, this home is secure. Yours says, I might blow away in a thunderstorm. It went through a tropical storm last year and didn't budge, I argued. It leans, she said. I measured it. You measured my mailbox? I carry a digital inclinometer, she said, as if this were a normal thing for a human being to have in their purse. It lists 1.5 degrees to the left. It's sloppy, Jack, and sloppy invites crime. I stared at her. You think my leaning mailbox is inviting crime? What, are drive-by mail thieves looking for slightly tilted targets? Broken windows theory, she snapped. Disorder breeds disorder. First, it's a crooked mailbox. Then it's weeds in the cracks of the driveway. Then it's an RV parked on the lawn. Then it's... well, we don't want to go there. She took a deep breath and composed herself, putting the smile back on. Look, it's simple. Article 3, Section 7. We want robust security. We want masonry. We want something that matches the architectural integrity of the house. You have a lovely brick home, Jack. Why would you put a tin can in front of it? So you're forcing me to build a brick structure, I said. I am strongly encouraging you to comply with the bylaws before the fines begin, she said. $100 a day, starting Friday. And you know I love the paperwork. I looked at her. I looked at her smug face, her perfect roses, her stupid brick pillar. I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet, metallic click of a safety being disengaged. Robust security, I said softly. Exactly, she nodded, thinking she had won. Security. Permanence. Something that can't just be knocked over. And the bylaws? They specify the materials? Brick, stone, or masonry matching the primary residence, she recited from memory. And it must be a permanent fixture. Any height restrictions? I asked. She paused. She blinked. Don't be difficult, Jack. Just make it look nice. Make it look like a fortress for your mail, if you have to. Just get rid of that eyesore. A fortress, I repeated. Yes, she said, turning back to her roses. A fortress. Now, if you'll excuse me, these hybrid teas won't prune themselves. I stood there for another moment, watching her. She had no idea what she had just done. She thought she was talking to Jack, the guy who paid his dues and kept his head down. She didn't know she was talking to Jack, the senior systems engineer who specialized in malicious compliance and over-engineering solutions to simple problems. Okay, Patricia, I said. You want a fortress? I'll build you a fortress. That's the spirit, she called out without looking back. I walked home. The heat didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt like fuel. I walked past the other houses, the compliant little brick boxes, the stone pillars. They were cute. They were adorable. I went inside my house, into the cool air conditioning, and went straight to the kitchen. I grabbed a beer, cracked it open, and walked into my office. I sat down at my desk, woke up my computer, and opened the resident portal. I downloaded the Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions CC&R document. 140 pages of rules about how to live your life. I scrolled until I found it. Article 3, Section 4.2.1. Mail receptacles and street fixtures. To ensure the aesthetic continuity and safety of the community, all mail receptacles must be encased in a permanent structure. Said structure must be constructed of brick, stone, or masonry, matching the primary residence's exterior. The structure must be designed to ensure the security of the mail delivery. Wooden posts are strictly prohibited. I read it 3 times. I looked for the limitations. Maximum width. Must not obstruct the sidewalk or roadway. Maximum height. Maximum height. There was no maximum height. There was a mention of standard accessibility, meaning the mail slot had to be between 41 and 45 inches from the road surface. But the structure itself? The housing? The decorative element? The bylaws were silent. I took a sip of beer and smiled. Patricia wanted grandeur. She wanted robust security. She wanted permanence. I opened AutoCAD. I didn't draw a mailbox. I drew a monument. I started with the foundation. A standard mailbox might have a little concrete pad, maybe 4 inches thick. I drew a footer that was 4 feet by 4 feet, going 6 feet deep into the Georgia clay. That's enough concrete to anchor a cell tower. Then, the core, reinforced concrete, rebar cage, number 5 bar, 12 inches on center. This thing wouldn't just stop a baseball bat. It would stop a Honda Civic moving at 40 miles per hour. Then, the facing. Brick. Georgian red, tumbled edge, to match my house exactly. And the height. I looked at the screen. The bylaws said the mail slot had to be at 42 inches. It didn't say the brick had to stop there. I extended the walls up and up, 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet. It was a monolith, an obelisk of spite. But Patricia had harped on security. Robust security, she had said. I opened a browser tab. I didn't want a key lock. Keys were pedestrian. Keys could be picked. Patricia had challenged my commitment to security. I searched for biometric access control systems, outdoor rated. I found it on a supplier site for industrial prisons and high-security data centers. The Retina Scan 9000, IP67 waterproof rating, vandal-resistant steel housing. It required a retinal match or a secure encrypted QR code to trigger the relay. I added a cavity to the blueprint for the scanner. I added a conduit for hardwired power and Ethernet. I added a battery backup system in case the power went out. I sat back and looked at the rendering. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was a 4-foot wide, 7-foot tall brick tower with a robotic eye, standing on the corner of my lot like a middle finger made of masonry. I needed a contractor. And not just any contractor. I needed someone who wouldn't ask questions. Or better yet, someone who would ask the right questions and then laugh. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Tank. Tank was a guy I had met on a job site a few years back. His real name was Thomas, but nobody called him that. He ran a small outfit called Tanks, Masonry, and Demolition. His slogan was, "We move earth, we stack stone." I hit dial. "Yeah?" Tank answered on the second ring. I could hear heavy machinery in the background. "Tank, it's Jack. You busy?" "I'm always busy, Jack. What broke?" "Nothing broke," I said. "I need to build something, fast, and it needs to be substantial." "Substantial like a retaining wall, or substantial like a barbecue pit?" "Substantial like a bunker," I said. "I've got an HOA problem." The line went silent for a second. Then I heard a low chuckle. "I hate HOAs. Talk to me. I need a brick structure, 4x4 base, 7 feet tall, solid concrete core, reinforced." "Whoa," Tank said. 7 feet? For what? You building a guard shack?" "A mailbox," I said. Silence. Then, "Jack, are you drunk?" "No, I'm compliant. The HOA president told me she wanted robust security and permanence. She said my current mailbox looked like it belonged in a trailer park. She challenged me to build a fortress." "She challenged you?" "She literally used the word fortress." Tank laughed. It was a deep, gravelly sound that made the speaker on my phone rattle. "I'm finishing up a job in Alpharetta tomorrow. I can swing by Thursday morning. But a pour that deep, we're gonna need the Mini-X. We're gonna tear up your yard." "Tear it up?" I said. "I don't care about the grass, I care about the message." "And the brick?" "I'll text you the photo of my house. Match it. And Tank, I need the strongest mortar you've got. The stuff they use for bridges." "Type S mortar mixed with acrylic bonder," Tank said instantly. "Sets like iron. You could drive a tank into it and the tank would lose." "Perfect. See you Thursday." I hung up. I looked at the calendar. Today was Tuesday. Thursday we break ground. Friday was the deadline. I had 72 hours to turn my curbside into a military installation. Wednesday was a blur of logistics. I went to the county office to pull the permit. I applied for a masonry accessory structure. The clerk, a tired woman named Brenda, looked at the application. "Dimensions?" she asked, hovering her pen over the form. 4x4 footprint, I said. 7 feet tall. She looked up over her glasses. "For a fence column?" "For a specialized secure enclosure," I said. She shrugged. "As long as it's 3 feet back from the curb and doesn't block the fire hydrant, I don't care if it's the Eiffel Tower. $50. I paid the $50. I had the permit. Legal armor. I spent the rest of the day sourcing the electronics. I managed to find the Retina scanner at a local security liquidation warehouse. The guy behind the counter looked at me like I was a spy or a paranoid prepper. "You? Putting this on a safe?" he asked as he rang it up. It cost $1,200. "Mailbox," I said. He paused, holding the credit card reader. "You get a lot of anthrax?" "Just a lot of bills," I said. I took the scanner home and spent the night wiring it up on my kitchen table. I connected it to a 12-volt power supply and a heavy-duty solenoid lock I'd salvaged from an old car trunk mechanism. I programmed it. I scanned my right eye. Beep. The solenoid clicked. Open. I scanned my left eye. Beep. Open. I held up a picture of myself to the camera. Nothing. "Access denied," the voice module chirped. I had added the voice module on a whim. It was a programmable soundboard. I recorded the prompts myself, pitching my voice down to sound like a cyborg. "Welcome, Jack. Unauthorized user. Security breach." It was childish. It was petty. It was absolutely essential. Thursday morning, 6:55 a.m. I was standing on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the subdivision. It was quiet, peaceful, the calm before the storm. At 6:58 a.m., a rumble started in the distance. It sounded like a thunderstorm rolling in, but the sky was clear. The rumble grew louder, a diesel engine, straining under load. At 7:00 a.m. on the dot, Tank's truck rounded the corner. It was a Ford F-450 Super Duty, caked in mud and concrete dust. On the trailer behind it sat a Kubota mini excavator, looking like a bright orange praying mantis. Tank parked in front of my house. He killed the engine, and the silence that followed was heavy with anticipation. He hopped out. He was wearing work boots, jeans that had seen better decades, and a t-shirt that said, "Dirt Therapy." "Morning, boss," Tank grunted, spitting a stream of tobacco juice into a plastic bottle. "Morning, Tank," I said. "Ready to make history?" "I brought the big bucket," he said, gesturing to the excavator. "If we're going deep, we're going wide." He unchained the excavator and drove it off the trailer. The metal tracks clattered against the asphalt, a harsh, industrial sound that echoed through the sleeping neighborhood. He drove it up the curb and onto my lawn. The grass surrendered immediately. The tracks tore 2 dark gashes into the manicured turf. Tank positioned the arm over the old mailbox. He didn't unbolt it. He didn't dig it out by hand. He just swung the bucket, caught the wooden post, and ripped it out of the ground like a weed. He tossed the old mailbox onto the trailer with a crash of metal. "Phase 1 complete," Tank yelled over the engine. "Dig," I ordered. The bucket bit into the earth. I watched with a grim satisfaction as the hole began to form. It was violent work. Roots snapped. Clay yielded. The pile of dirt on my driveway grew into a small mountain. By 7:15, the hole was waist deep. By 7:20, I saw the blinds move at the Henderson house. By 7:25, the inevitable happened. The front door of the beige palace down the street flew open. Patricia came out. She wasn't wearing her gardening gear today. She was wearing a silk bathrobe and fuzzy slippers, and she was moving with a speed that defied physics. "Here we go," I muttered, taking a sip of coffee. She was screaming before she even reached my property line. I couldn't hear the words over the roar of the excavator, but I could read the body language. It was the universal sign language for, "What in the name of zoning is happening?" Tank saw her. He ignored her. He was a professional. He just kept digging. She reached the edge of the driveway, her face a mask of horror. She looked at the hole. She looked at the excavator. She looked at me. "Jack!" she shrieked. Her voice pierced the diesel rumble. I walked down the steps, calm, collected, holding my mug. "Morning, Patricia," I shouted. "Coffee?" "Stop this!" she screamed, waving her arms at Tank. "Stop this immediately!" Tank throttled down the engine. The sudden drop in decibels left her voice ringing in the air. "You are destroying the easement!" she yelled. "What is this? What is he doing?" "He's preparing the foundation," I said. "For the mailbox." "Foundation? That's a crater. You're digging to China. This is a residential neighborhood, not a quarry." "It needs to be deep for stability," I explained, channeling my inner civil engineer. "To achieve true permanence, we need to anchor below the frost line. We need to ensure the center of gravity is low to prevent tipping. You were very concerned about it leaning, remember?" "I wanted you to put it in straight," she sputtered. "I didn't tell you to excavate the entire street corner." "Robust security requires a robust foundation," I said. "Bylaws, Patricia. I'm just following your lead." I am the president, she shouted, her bathrobe flapping in the morning breeze. And I am ordering you to cease and desist. You do not have approval for heavy machinery. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the permit. I had laminated it. I handed it to her. County permit, I said. And if you check the HOA bylaws, Section 9, subsection C, heavy machinery is allowed for emergency structural repairs for up to 72 hours. Since my mail is currently exposed to the elements, I pointed to the empty space where the box used to be. This is an emergency. She stared at the permit. She stared at me. She looked like she was trying to explode me with her mind. This isn't over, she hissed. You can't just dig a hole. Watch me, I said. She turned to Tank. You're complicit in this. I'll have your license. Tank leaned out of the cab. He looked at her like she was a particularly annoying gnat. Lady, I'm licensed, bonded, and insured, and I'm on the clock. You want to stand in the hole, or you want to move? Patricia gasped. She clutched her pearls, which, incredibly, she was wearing with the bathrobe. I am calling the police. Go ahead, I said. They can watch the concrete pour. It's very soothing. She turned and stomped back toward her house. She's got spirit, Tank mused. She's a menace, I said. How deep are we? 4 feet. 2 more to go. Keep digging. The police arrived 45 minutes later. I had used the time productively. I'd made a second pot of coffee and set up a lawn chair on the porch, watching Tank finish the excavation. The hole was now a perfect square, 6 feet deep, with walls so straight they looked like they'd been cut with a laser. It was a beautiful void. When the cruiser rolled up, it didn't come in hot with sirens wailing. It crept up the street, silent and weary, like a predator that was tired of hunting. It was a Charger, black and white, the official vehicle of, we have better things to do than this. 2 officers stepped out. I recognized the look on their faces immediately. It was the look of men who had been called to a domestic disturbance that turned out to be an argument over a hedge trimmer. The older one, whose name tag read Miller, hitched up his belt and adjusted his sunglasses. He looked like he was about 3 days from retirement and actively counting the hours. The younger one, Jimenez, looked sharp, eager, and slightly confused by the sight of a mini excavator parked on a suburban lawn. Patricia, naturally, was waiting for them at the curb. She had changed out of her bathrobe into a sensible pantsuit, presumably to look more like a credible witness and less like a crazy lady who screamed at dirt. "Officers!" she called out, waving them down like she was landing a plane on an aircraft carrier. "Over here! You have to stop this madness!" I stayed on the porch for a moment, letting her wind herself up. "Ma'am," Officer Miller said, his voice a slow rumble. "We got a call about unauthorized industrial activity and a threat to public safety." "Yes," Patricia pointed a manicured finger at the hole. "Look at that! He's dug a pit, a death trap, right next to the sidewalk. Children play here. Dogs walk here." "Is that your property, ma'am?" Miller asked, looking at the hole. "No, it's his," she pointed at me. "But he's endangering the community, and the noise, and the visual violence of it." Visual violence. I had to hand it to her. She was creative. I stood up and walked down the driveway. I kept my hands visible, holding my coffee mug like a peace offering. "Morning, officers," I said. "I'm Jack, the homeowner." Miller turned to me. He lowered his sunglasses just enough for me to see eyes that had seen it all and were impressed by none of it. "Sir, you mind telling me why you're digging a grave on your front lawn?" "It's not a grave, officer. It's a footer." "A footer for what?" Jimenez asked, stepping closer to the edge of the pit. He whistled. That's deep. You building a retaining wall? A mailbox, I said. Both officers froze. Miller looked at me. Then he looked at the hole. Then he looked at Tank, who was leaning against the excavator tracks, eating a sandwich he had produced from nowhere. A mailbox, Miller repeated slowly. Yes, sir. The HOA requested I upgrade my previous mailbox to something with permanence and robust security. They were very specific about the need for masonry and stability. I smiled at Patricia. I'm just complying with the request. Patricia bristled. He's mocking the board. No one needs a 6-foot foundation for a mailbox. It's malicious. It's a spite hole. A spite hole? Jimenez covered his mouth, coughing to hide a laugh. I have the permit right here, I said, pulling the laminated document from my back pocket. I handed it to Miller. He took it, studying it with the scrutiny of a forensic accountant. Permit number, date, masonry structure accessory, approved by county planning. He looked up. It's stamped, ma'am. But the intent, Patricia argued. The intent is to annoy me. Being annoying isn't a crime, ma'am, Miller said, handing the permit back to me. If it was, I'd have arrested my mother-in-law 10 years ago. Jimenez grinned. So, let me get this straight. You're building a mailbox. That requires a 6-foot deep concrete anchor? I don't want it to tip over, I said innocently. Wind shear is a real problem in this valley. There is no wind shear in this valley, Patricia shrieked. We are in a cul-de-sac. Ma'am, Miller interrupted, his voice firming up. This is a civil matter. He has a permit for the construction. He's on his own land. He's not blocking the street. He's not blocking the sidewalk. He looked at the safety tape I had strung up around the hole. He's got proper safety markings. But he can't just... Patricia stammered, running out of steam. It's going to be ugly. Then you can take that up with the HOA board or a judge, Miller said. But right now, no laws are being broken. He turned to me. Sir, keep the noise down before 7 a.m. and after 9 p.m. Other than that, good luck with your mail. Thank you, officer. As they turned to leave, Jimenez paused. He looked at the rebar cage that was sitting on the grass, waiting to be lowered in. It was a grid of steel thick enough to reinforce a bank vault. You expecting bills from the cartel? He whispered. Just utility bills, I said. But you can never be too safe. Right, he smirked. Make sure you use the good concrete. 4,000 psi. 5,000, I corrected. He gave me a nod of respect and got back in the cruiser. Patricia stood there for a moment longer, vibrating with impotent rage. This isn't over, Jack. The Architectural Control Committee will reject the final build. You'll have to tear it down. I will make you tear it down brick by brick with your bare hands. We'll see, Patricia, I said. We'll see. She stormed off. I turned to Tank. Ready for the concrete? I asked. Tank crumpled his sandwich wrapper. Truck's 5 minutes out. I hope you like gray, 'cause we're about to pour a whole lot of it. The concrete truck arrived at 10:00 a.m. It was a massive mixer, the drums spinning slowly, churning 6 yards of high-strength slurry. The driver, a guy named Sal, hopped out and looked at the hole. You the guy putting in the pool? Sal asked. Mailbox footer, Tank said. Sal stared at him. Get out of here. Hand to God. Sal looked at the hole, then at the rebar cage we had just lowered in. I've poured foundations for 2-story houses with less steel than that. Just pour it, Sal, Tank said. The man pays for overkill. The chute swung out. The drum revved up. The gray sludge began to flow. It filled the hole with a wet, heavy, slurping sound. We vibrated the concrete to get the air bubbles out, ensuring a solid, monolithic block. By the time we were done, The hole was filled to ground level, a perfect square of wet cement with rebar sticking up out of the center like the skeleton of a skyscraper. "That's not going anywhere," Tank said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "In a million years, when the aliens come, they'll find two things left in this neighborhood: Twinkies and this footer." "Let it cure," I said. "We start laying brick tomorrow." Friday. The deadline. The foundation had set. It was rock hard. Tank arrived with a pallet of bricks. Georgian red, tumbled edge, a perfect match to my house. He also brought bags of mortar and a mixer. The construction began. This wasn't just stacking bricks. This was art. Tank was a master mason. He laid the first course, checking it with a level 4 times. "Square is fair," he muttered. As the structure rose, the sheer scale of it became apparent. A standard mailbox column is maybe 16 inches wide. This was 4 feet. It was a wall, a tower. By noon, it was 4 feet high. The neighbors were gathering now, not just peeking through blinds, but actually coming out. Mr. Henderson from across the street walked over with his dog. "Hey, Jack," Henderson said, looking at the growing monument. "Building a chimney?" "Mailbox," I said. Henderson looked at the 4-foot-wide base. He looked at Patricia's house down the street. A slow smile spread across his face. "She wrote you up?" he asked. "She told me to build a fortress," I said. "She said she wanted grandeur." Henderson laughed. "It's grand, all right. You know, from my living room, this thing is going to perfectly block my view of her ugly beige Toyota." Happy to be of service. By 3:00 p.m., we hit 6 feet. Tank set the form for the final course. We left the cavity for the electronics. I brought out the steel box I had pre-wired. We slid it into the center of the brick column. It fit perfectly. Then came the capstone. I had custom-ordered a slab of limestone, 4 inches thick, to sit on top. It weighed 300 pounds. Tank and his assistant had to lift it into place. Thud. It was done. Well, the structure was done. Now came the soul. I spent the next hour installing the guts. I ran the wires through the conduit. I connected the 12-volt battery backup. I soldered the connections for the Retina scanner. The scanner itself was a thing of beauty. A black glass panel, sleek and ominous, mounted flush with the brick. Below it, a keypad. Below that, the heavy steel drawer with the solenoid lock. I powered it up. The panel hummed. A red ring of light glowed around the camera lens. I programmed the voice module. This was the cherry on top. I connected my laptop to the USB port on the control board and uploaded the sound files I had recorded the night before. I tested it. I pressed the call button on the keypad. "System armed," the voice boomed. It was loud. I had installed a marine-grade speaker inside the cavity. "Perfect," I whispered. Now I just needed to test the user experience. I saw the white mail truck turning onto the street at the far end of the block. "Tank," I said, "don't leave yet. You're going to want to see this." Stan the mailman was a creature of habit. He drove the route the same way every day. He stopped at the same boxes. He listened to the same talk radio station. He pulled up to the curb in front of my house. He hit the brakes. The truck skidded slightly. He stared. He leaned out of the truck, his blue uniform shirt unbuttoned at the top, his sunglasses sliding down his nose. He looked at the 7-foot-tall, 4-foot-wide brick obelisk standing where a wooden post used to be. He looked at me. I was standing next to it, beaming. "Jack," Stan said. What is this?" "Compliance, Stan," I said. "It's the new standard for curbside grandeur." It looks like a mausoleum for a very small king, Stan observed. It's a secure receptacle, I said. Come here, I need to get you in the system. Stan turned off the truck. He got out. This was unprecedented. Stan never got out of the truck unless there was a package requiring a signature or a dog requiring a treat. He walked up to the monolith. He touched the brick. Solid. Reinforced concrete core, I bragged. And this? He pointed to the scanner. Retina scanner. Stan looked at me like I had grown a second head. You're messing with me. Nope. Patricia said the old box wasn't secure enough. So now, to deliver the mail, you need clearance. I held up the laminated card I had prepared. It was a simple ID card with a QR code and a picture of a generic mail truck. I can't scan your retina, obviously, I said. Privacy laws and all that. So I made you a key. I handed him the card. Hold it under the scanner. Stan took the card. He looked at it. He looked at the scanner. He shrugged. If this thing shoots a laser at me, I'm suing. He held the card up. The scanner flashed green. Access granted. Welcome, postal carrier, the robotic voice announced. Click hiss. The heavy steel drawer popped open, sliding out on smooth, ball-bearing rails. Stan jumped back about a foot. Holy mother of... He started laughing. It wasn't a polite laugh. It was a wheezing, knee-slapping guffaw. He leaned against the brickwork for support. It talks, he gasped. It actually talks. It's polite, I said. Stan wiped his eyes. Jack, this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen. I love it. He grabbed a stack of mail from his bag, mostly flyers and a bill, and dropped them into the drawer. He pushed it shut. Clunk. The solenoid engaged. Secure, the voice said. That is satisfying, Stan admitted. That feels like I'm launching a missile. See you tomorrow, Stan? Wouldn't miss it for the world, he said. I'm gonna bring the supervisor by. He thinks the guy on Elm Street with the gargoyles is crazy. He hasn't seen nothing yet. Stan drove off, still shaking his head. Tank walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. That went well? Phase 2 complete, I said. Now we wait for the final boss. The final boss arrived at 6:30 p.m. The sun was starting to dip, casting long, dramatic shadows. The shadow of my mailbox stretched all the way across the street, touching the edge of Henderson's lawn. It was symbolic. I was sitting on the front steps, waiting. I had a cooler of beer. Tank had left, but I had told him to keep his phone on. Patricia didn't come alone. She brought the posse. The Architectural Control Committee consisted of Patricia, Roger, a nervous accountant who lived in fear of conflict, Susan, who took notes on everything, including, I suspected, her own breathing, and Bob. Bob was the vice president. Bob was a retired mechanic who mostly joined the board to make sure they didn't ban working on cars in the driveway. I liked Bob. They walked up the sidewalk in a phalanx. Patricia was in the lead, carrying a clipboard and a tape measure. She looked like she was marching into battle. She stopped 10 feet from the monolith. Silence. The birds stopped singing. The wind died down. The only sound was the scratching of Susan's pen on her notepad. Well, Patricia said finally. Her voice was tight. You built it. I did, I said, cracking open a beer. Evening, board members. Refreshment? They ignored the offer. Patricia walked a slow circle around the structure. She ran her hand along the brickwork. She couldn't find a flaw. Tank was too good. The mortar joints were perfect. The lines were plumb. She came back to the front. She stared at the black glass panel. This is not what I envisioned, she said. It meets all the criteria, I countered. Article 3, Section 4.2.1. Brick matching the residence? Check. Permanent structure? It has a 6-foot concrete footer. It is the definition of permanent. Secure? It's tighter than Fort Knox. It's enormous, Roger squeaked. It's imposing. It's grand, I corrected. Curbside grandeur, Roger. We're raising the property values. Patricia stepped closer. What is this electronic device? The bylaws say nothing about electronics. The bylaws say the structure must be designed to ensure the security of the mail delivery. This is a biometric access control system. You can't get more secure than that. It's a mailbox, Jack, not a safe deposit box, she snapped. How does the mailman get in? He has a key card. Would you like to see how it works? I want to inspect the interior, she demanded. I need to verify that it meets the volume requirements for standard parcels. Go ahead, I said. Open it. She reached for the handle on the drawer. She tugged. It didn't move. She tugged harder. Her knuckles turned white. It's locked, she said. Of course it's locked. It's secure. Unlock it. I can't. It's biometric. It only opens for authorized users. I am the president of the association, she yelled, her composure cracking. I am authorized to inspect all exterior fixtures. The system doesn't know that, I said calmly. It only knows retinas and encrypted keys. This is ridiculous. Open this box immediately or I will write you up for obstruction. She glared at the scanner. She leaned in, her face inches from the black glass, trying to intimidate the machine. Open, she commanded. The sensor detected the proximity. The red light flared, scanning her furious eyes. I held my breath. This was it. The speaker crackled to life. Access denied, the voice thundered. The volume was set to maximum. It echoed off the neighboring houses. Patricia jumped back. Roger dropped his clipboard. Then, the second part of the script played. Unauthorized user, Patricia detected. Please step away from the perimeter. Bob let out a sound that was definitely a snort of laughter. He turned it into a cough, but I saw his shoulders shaking. Patricia's face went from red to white to a shade of purple, usually found in bruised plums. It knows my name? She whispered. It has a threat detection database, I lied. I uploaded the profiles of known security risks. I am a security risk? She shrieked. I am the president. The algorithm is very sensitive to hostility, I said. Maybe if you asked nicely? She looked at the box. She looked at me. She looked at the smirking Bob. She realized she was beaten. She couldn't cite me for materials. She couldn't cite me for placement. And she couldn't claim it wasn't secure. She had demanded a fortress, and I had given her one that knew her name and rejected her. This is harassment, she muttered. It's compliance, I said. It's exactly what you asked for, Patricia. Robust, permanent, secure. She slammed her tape measure onto the ground. Fine, keep your monstrosity. But mark my words, Jack, if one weed grows around that base, I will fine you. If that light blinks too loudly at night, I will fine you. The light doesn't blink at night, I said helpfully. It has a distinct sleep mode. She turned on her heel and marched away, her posse trailing behind her. Bob lingered for a second. He looked at the scanner. Does it really know who she is? He asked. I programmed it to recognize anyone who tries to force the handle without a key, I admitted. But don't tell her that. Bob grinned. You know, my mailbox is looking a little flimsy. Think your guy Tank is available next week? I'll give you his number. Part 7. The Aftermath. The victory was sweet, but the legacy was sweeter. The following week, the HOA lawyer sent a letter. It was full of words like excessive and non-conforming use, but my brother-in-law shot it down in 20 minutes. He cited the vague wording of the original bylaws. He argued that since the HOA had demanded security, they couldn't penalize me for providing it. He also pointed out that attempting to force me to remove a security device could be seen as an endorsement of mail theft. They dropped it. But the real fallout was social. The Patricia Detected clip hit the neighborhood group chat. Then it hit TikTok. The teenager down the street, Kevin, filmed himself trying to break in with a crowbar, plastic prop. The box shouted, "Security breach," and he pretended to die. The video got 3 million views. People started driving by just to see it. The monolith of Whispering Pines. Patricia couldn't take it. Every time she drove out of her driveway, she had to pass the brick tower that blocked her view of the world. Every time she saw the mailman, she saw him laughing as he scanned his card. 2 months later, she resigned. She claimed it was to focus on her family. But we all knew the truth. She had been defeated by a pile of bricks and a Raspberry Pi computer. Bob took over as president. His first act was to amend the bylaws. Article 3, Section 4.2.2. While security is important, mailboxes should ideally not exceed 5 feet in height or possess sentience. I was grandfathered in, of course. The fortress still stands today. The brick has weathered nicely. The ivy I planted around the base, carefully trimmed, looks distinguished. And every day, when I come home from work, I walk up to the scanner. I lean in. The red light washes over my eye. "Welcome home, Jack." The heavy steel drawer slides open. I take out my mail. I look down the street at Patricia's house, obscured behind my wall of spite, and I smile. Grandeur achieved.